There are some stories adults agree not to tell their children, not because they're untrue, but because no one can agree on what the truth would be for. This is one of those stories that required a decision. They waited until after the cake. The plates were still on the counter. Someone had put the candles in the sink. The dishwasher was running, loud enough that I remember thinking they wouldn't hear me if I moved. My parents took my brother into the den. My dad closed the door, but he didn't latch it. He never latched doors unless he was angry, and he wasn't angry. That's part of why I stayed. I was sitting on the floor in my room with my back against the wall we shared with the den, lining up my car so their bumpers touched. I remember stopping halfway through because I heard my mom say my brother's name in a voice she only used when something was serious and already decided. "Before we start," my mom said, careful and slow, "we want you to know that nothing you're about to hear means you did something wrong." My brother didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice sounded older than it had that morning. "Okay," he said. My dad cleared his throat. He always did that when he was about to say something he'd practiced. "We've talked about this for a long time," my dad said, "your mom and I. Longer than you probably realize." My mom exhaled. "Since you were little," she said. "Since before you'd remember it." There was a pause. I remember thinking that if I stayed perfectly still, the floor wouldn't creak. "This is why we agreed," my dad said, "that we would tell you when you turned 18. My brother let out a short breath. "Tell me what?" he asked. My mom answered him, but her voice was steadier than I expected. "About the winter that Mark drowned," she said. I stopped lining up the cars. I remembered the name, but only the name. I didn't remember a face. "There was an investigation," my dad said quickly. "You might remember the police coming by. You were young." "I remember the lights," my brother said. "I thought it was about traffic." That was part of it," my mom said. "They talked to all the parents. They talked to the kids who were there." My brother didn't say anything. I could hear him breathing. "It was ruled an accident," my dad said, "and that hasn't changed." "And it won't," my mom added. "Nothing about this changes that." "So why are you telling me now?" my brother asked. "Because you're 18, my dad almost said at the same time as my mom. "Because you deserve to know." My dad let her finish. "There were a group of you," my mom said, "kids from the block. You were all throwing rocks at the ice. It had frozen over earlier that year." "We know that sounds dangerous now," my dad said, "but it wasn't unusual. Kids did it all the time back then." My brother made a small noise, like he was agreeing without speaking. "Mark went out farther than he should have," my mom said. I think someone dared him. He shouldn't have gone, but no one stopped him." "Then they kept throwing the rocks," my dad said. "Pebbles, chunks of ice, nothing big. And then the ice broke," my mom said. There was a pause long enough that I could hear the dishwasher change cycles. "It's important you understand this part," my dad said. "There's no way to know exactly what caused it. The ice was already thin. There were multiple impacts. But the last rock," she said, "the one that landed closest to him." She stopped herself. "That distinction isn't useful," she said. "It doesn't lead anywhere." My dad picked it up without emphasis. "Your brother was there," he said, "like all of you." "He was 4, my mom said, "barely 4. He shouldn't have even been out there." "I picked it up because the other kids were daring him," my dad said. "They were surprised that he could lift it." And it could have happened anyway," my mom said. "That's the truth of it." My brother finally spoke. His voice sounded far away. "You're saying he did it?" he said. "No," my mom said immediately. "We're not saying that. We're saying that there isn't a version of this where responsibility fits neatly," my dad said. My brother swallowed. "Does he know?" he asked. "No," my mom said. "We never told him," my dad added. That was part of what we disagreed about. My mom didn't deny it. I didn't see the point, she said. What would it have done for him? What would it have done to him? He was a baby back then. And I thought, my dad said carefully, that someday he should know what happened about his own life. So you compromised? My brother said. Yes, my mom said. We agreed to wait. Until you were old enough, my dad said. Old enough to understand that sometimes there isn't a right way to respond. My brother was quiet for a long time. You're telling me because I'm an adult now? He said. We're telling you because you're leaving, my dad said, because you're going to make decisions without us, and yes, because you're an adult. My mom chimed in, and because we didn't want you to hear it from somewhere else or piece it together wrong. My brother exhaled slowly. What am I supposed to do with this? He asked. Nothing, my mom said. You're not supposed to do anything. My dad nodded. This isn't a burden we're handing you, it's just information. The dishwasher clicked in the background. He doesn't remember, does he? My brother asked. No, my mom said. Then after a beat, she added, and if he did, it wouldn't be accurate. My brother didn't answer right away. Finally, he said, okay, the way you say something when you don't know what the answer should be or what else to say. We love you, my mom said, and we love your brother. And you don't need to tell him, my dad said. There's no reason to. It wouldn't help him. No one spoke after that. I realized my hands were shaking so hard I had to sit on them to make it stop. I didn't go into the den after that. I waited until I heard my brother's door close. Then I waited longer because sometimes he opened it again to get water or charge his phone. When I was sure he wasn't coming back out, I got up and put my cars away without lining them up. I didn't like them touching anymore. The house sounded different once the dishwasher stopped. Too empty, like everything had been turned off in the wrong order. My parents stayed in the den for a while. I could hear the murmur of their voices, but not the words. It sounded the same as it always did when they talked about bills or schedules, calm, low, already resolved. That was the worst part. Nothing in their voices sounded like something new had happened. When my mom finally opened her door, I froze, even though she wasn't looking at me. She walked past my room, down the hall, and into the kitchen. I heard her open the refrigerator, then close it again without taking anything out. Are you still up? She called. Yes, I said, and my voice came out wrong, too loud, like I'd practiced it. She appeared in my doorway and leaned against the frame. She looked tired, but not upset. That confused me. I waited for her to say something. Did you hear us talking? She asked. I shook my head. It felt easier than answering. Okay. Like that settled it. It's late. You should get some sleep. She reached out and straightened my blanket, even though it wasn't crooked. Her hand stayed there a second longer than usual. Then she turned the light off. In the dark, I tried to remember the pond. I couldn't. Not really. I had pictures in my head, but I didn't trust them. I didn't know which ones were mine and which ones were from the stories and the news or things people had said later. I remembered the cold. I remembered standing on something hard. I remember someone laughing because I was small and holding something big. That was all. I lay there and waited for the part where I was supposed to feel bad, but it never came. What came instead was a tight feeling, like when you realize you've been saying a word wrong your whole life and no one's corrected you. The next morning, everything was normal. My brother slept in. My parents didn't mention his birthday anymore. My dad read the paper. My mom asked me if I wanted cereal or toast. I said cereal because it didn't require explaining anything. My brother finally came into the kitchen. He looked the same. That was wrong, too. He poured coffee and leaned against the counter like he always did. He didn't look at me any differently. I watched his hands the whole time. I wanted him to look at me and say something, anything that meant he knew that I knew. He didn't. Do you have plans today? My mom asked him. Later, he said. Drive safe, my dad said automatically. My brother nodded and picked up his keys. As he walked past me, he hesitated just for a second. His hand brushed my shoulder like it always had, but this time it felt deliberate, like he was checking that I was still there. That was the moment I knew they were right. He didn't remember it the way I did, or maybe he remembered it too much already. After he left, I went outside and stood at the edge of the yard, even though there was nowhere I needed to go. The grass was wet. I could feel it soaking through my socks. I picked up a rock from the driveway. It wasn't heavy. I could lift it easily. That made my chest hurt in a way that I didn't have words for yet. I put it back down exactly where I'd found it, and then I stood there longer than I needed to, making sure it didn't move. That was when I started noticing how often adults say it doesn't matter when they mean we can't do anything about it. That was when I learned the difference. I'm older than my brother was when they told him now. That used to feel like it meant something. Like there was a point where the story would change shape if you waited long enough. It didn't. Between 10 and 18, nothing dramatic happened. That was the problem. I learned how to be careful in ways no one ever asked me to be. I stopped being the last person to do things. If kids were jumping off something, I went first or not at all. I learned how to read faces before people spoke. I learned when a situation was about to become not useful to talk about. Adults said that phrase more than I realized. It doesn't matter. What they really meant was, we've decided to stop looking at this. Once you hear it that way, you hear it everywhere. I didn't think about the pond every day. That would have been easier to explain. Instead, it showed up sideways. I'd notice when people stepped back at the same time. I'd feel a tightness when something was about to be decided without me. I developed a quiet fear of being the last link in a chain, even if I didn't know what the chain was. When I was 15, a kid at school broke his leg falling from bleachers. People argued for weeks about whether the railing had been loose. Eventually, the school replaced it. Everyone moved on. I remember thinking that if they hadn't fixed it, it still wouldn't have been anyone's fault. That thought stayed. My parents told me on my 18th birthday the way they said they would. It wasn't a surprise. It sounded rehearsed. There were details I already knew, and others that slid into place without resistance. I listened the way my brother had listened, without interrupting, without asking for anything to be clarified. When they finished, my mom asked if I was okay. I said yes, because I understood by then that okay was the answer that allowed things to stay where they were and to keep going. I don't blame them. I understand why my mother didn't want to tell me when I was younger. I understand why my father believed waiting had an expiration date. I understand why 18 felt like a solution instead of a delay. What I don't understand is when something becomes useful. That was the word my mom used. Useful. That distinction isn't useful. It doesn't lead anywhere. She was right. It didn't lead anywhere. It just stayed. I haven't told my brother that I heard them that night. I don't know what that would be for. I don't know what version of him I would be talking to. Sometimes I think that means I learned the lesson they meant to teach him. Sometimes I think it means I learned something else entirely. I have a child now. He's 4. Sometimes he surprises me with how strong he is. Sometimes he does something without understanding why the room gets quiet afterwards. I watch the adults more than I watch him. There are stories we don't tell our kids because they're too young. There are stories we don't tell them because we don't know how they'll carry them. And there are stories we don't tell them because once you do, you lose the right to decide what they do with the weight. I still don't know when the truth becomes survivable. I only know how easy it is to decide that today isn't that day. Sometimes what shapes us most isn't what happened, but what was decided afterward. The rooms that go quiet, the conversations that close, the moments labeled finished before they feel finished. If that feels familiar, know that your questions are not unreasonable. We all deserve room to breathe around the things we carry. Please be kind to yourself and to others, and thank you for being here.